can I just ask you, when was the last time that you lay awake at night worrying about your own bills?
Well, I'm in a privileged position of being well paid as a member of Parliament and as the Prime Minister. But I have had, I don't know how many conversations with pensioners and others about the concerns that they have. And that's why it's really important for me to say again, anybody who's entitled to pension credit needs to take that pension credit up.
Well, once again, Prime Minister, with respect, that wasn't the question. The question was, when was the last time you worried about your own bills?
Well, I've answered that, I think, which is to say I am in a privileged position. I accept that.
Never before has the UK seen a new Prime Minister crash and burn this quickly. Less than 6 months in, and Keir Starmer is already facing massive public backlash. Recently, Starmer steps into a BBC radio show, only to be absolutely roasted by the hosts and its callers. As expected, he stumbled horribly while responding and stuck to his usual nonsensical excuses. He's floundering, and it's painful to hear. Take a listen.
I'd like to, first of all, start by asking, do you have a problem with Lincolnshire? Have the people of Lincolnshire upset you in any way? Because you seem to have upset an awful lot of people in the county since you were elected back in July.
No, I've got absolutely nothing against Lincoln. It's a fantastic county, an underappreciated county, huge, rural, beautiful, and I've been there a number of times.
But under your plans, there are various plans that I'd like to talk with you about, particularly rural Lincolnshire being affected. Farming, for example. They say family farms will be put out of business by your budget.
Yeah, firstly, I do understand their concerns. Just 2 or 3 things which I do think are really important in answer to this. Firstly, in the budget, we allocated £5 billion over the next 2 years to farming. That's the single biggest amount of money into sustainable food production. That's hugely important for farmers, plus money for dealing with flooding, which is always a problem, and the outbreak of disease. On the inheritance tax, obviously what farmers want to do, understandably, is make sure that the family farm is preserved, that,
Yes, but you're going to put those family farms out of business. Well, they will not be able to continue.
Yeah, Sean, just hear me out if you don't mind. In a typical case, which is, parents passing initially to each other, to the other spouse when one dies, and then on to a child, so that's a typical case, the threshold before inheritance tax is paid is £3 million.
But they're saying that's not enough. That's not enough, Prime Minister. If you count the land...
That means, well... No, but £3 million means that the vast majority of farms are completely unaffected. The vast majority completely unaffected, because that £3 million threshold is a very high threshold. There aren't many farms year on year that are sold in excess of that amount, and therefore that threshold is high. Vast majority of farmers won't be affected. It's really important I say that, because I do understand the concern.
Let me just put a point. Martha Hayes is a farmer in Lincolnshire. She's family farm. She fears that she won't be able to continue because of the budget. Just have a quick listen to what Martha had to say earlier.
I would like to ask Sir Keir Starmer if he will commit to undertaking an independent review to reassess how many farms will be affected and what the detrimental impact of this policy will actually be.
You have your figures from the Treasury. The farmers are saying those figures are not right. They're wrong. And could there be an independent review? Some would say maybe the review should have happened before the budget.
Well, the review did happen before the budget, and that's why we've got the Treasury figures which have been published. But what I'd say to Martha is, look, if she would be good enough or kind enough to contact me either by letter, email, any way she likes, I'll happily look at her individual case. I obviously don't know the value of her farm, but I'm very happy, whether it's Martha or anybody else, if she wants to get in touch with me, I'll get the team to run through the figures with her.
Well, another issue here in Lincolnshire is that of pylons on farmland, concreting prime agricultural land to put pylons from Grimsby all the way to Norfolk. I mean, that's not going to be good for the environment, and it's taking farmland out of use for growing food.
Yeah, what we're trying to do here is to get to renewable energy as quickly as we can be, because it's cheaper, it's independent, which means that Putin can't put his boot on our throats and prices go through the roof, which massively affects individuals, businesses, and of course farms, where they're using energy quite intensely in some places. So we need to get to that renewable energy. That will mean that we have to take difficult decisions on things like pylons. But what we do need to do,
wouldn't it be better underground, though?
Local communities. Well, yes, in the sense that they're not obviously overground, but the cost then is very, very high. And, people listening to this will want to know that their energy bills are coming down. And what I don't want to do is to say to them, well, we've gone to renewable energy, but we've taken the most expensive route to get there, so I'm afraid your bill is going up. I want to be able to say, and I will be able to say, we're going to renewable energy, therefore your energy bill will come down. And
it's the same question with solar farms, isn't it, Prime Minister? Many solar farms, big solar farms, could be built here in Lincolnshire, again on prime agricultural land. I don't know if you can see the Downing Street garden at the moment. Would you be happy? Half an acre there, 1,000 solar panels in your garden?
Well, I don't object to solar panels at all.
Would you like 1,000 in your garden?
They generate. Well, I wouldn't have any problem with solar panels in my garden, but the point again is this. We've had, for the last 3 years, very high energy prices, and it's been really difficult for people. My job is to answer the question, how are you going to bring those prices down and do it for good? We can't be doing this, prices go down a bit over the summer, they go back up again in the winter in that way.
Well, we have a very cold snap at the moment, Prime Minister, here in Lincolnshire, and a lot of people concerned about the winter fuel benefits as well. Let me just play this from Maxine, who was on the show earlier.
We just can't keep warm. People are going to die.
Keir Starmer's stance on renewable energy is riddled with flaws. While he emphasises energy independence, he fails to explain how his approach secures it, relying on oversimplified and short-sighted reasoning that once again undermines trust in his ability to lead a sustainable transition. Now listen closely as Starmer replies to this caller with absolutely no remorse.
Let me just play this from Maxine, who was on the show earlier.
We just can't keep warm. People are going to die. Elderly people are literally going to die. How's he going to live with that? Is he going to have the courage to back down from a terrible decision?
She's wearing extra layers. She can't put the heating on this week, despite the cold weather, because of your decision to withdraw her winter fuel payment.
Well, every pensioner who's entitled to pension credit will
She's 63. She won't be pension age till 67, so she's not entitled to pension credit.
Well, in which case there's the Warm Homes discount for people who need that support, and I'd happily make that available to your programme so that people can get access to it. But at the moment, and until we bring into force the changes, the allowance is paid to everyone, irrespective of whether they need it or not. And there's a lot of pensioners who say, I don't actually need it. And I then have to answer the question, what difficult decisions can we make to ensure we can use our money most effectively? We've got problems with the NHS, as you know. The waiting lists are through the roof. I've got to bring those down.
Maxine's going to be a strain on that NHS if she doesn't heat her home.
Many pensioners are waiting for operations, and we have to bring those waiting lists down, and that's what we made a priority in the budget. But I would, where people are entitled to pension credit, I would ask and encourage them to take that up, because it's very important that they get that level of protection.
Keir Starmer's stance on renewable energy is riddled with flaws and is beyond frustrating. He talks about energy independence, but fails to explain how his approach actually achieves it. Instead, he relies on overly simplistic and short-sighted reasoning. It's the kind of thinking that breeds more problems than solutions, leaving the public with more questions than answers. If we're ever going to transition to sustainable energy, we need a leader who can see the bigger picture, not one who makes empty promises and expects everyone to just go along with it. Now listen closely as Starmer responds to this caller, but don't expect any real answers. His reply is full of excuses, deflections, and absolutely zero remorse.
Sir Keir Starmer, the winter fuel allowance has been a huge worry for so many of our listeners here on BBC Radio WM. Message here, I can't remember Sir Keir promising to terrify and freeze to death the elderly in his manifesto. That is what people are feeling. A huge amount of people saying they will be put into fuel poverty this winter because of your policy.
Yeah, look, we had to take some really difficult decisions in the budget because We inherited a very badly damaged economy. We then discovered £22 billion in a black hole, which the last government had sort of made provision in terms of the spending of that money, but had no money in the pot to pay for it. So we had to then look across the board and say, well, what are the decisions that we can make?
Keir Starmer's response to the concerns about the winter fuel allowance is nothing short of tone-deaf and reckless. Instead of acknowledging the genuine fear and suffering of millions, he deflects with excuses about a badly damaged economy and a £22 billion black hole left by the previous government. This is an insult to those who are struggling right now, freezing in their homes because of his decisions. People don't want to hear about the past or some abstract economic crisis. They want action. They want Starmer to stop making excuses and start doing something to protect the elderly and vulnerable. A real solution would be for Starmer to put aside his bureaucratic nonsense and immediately reinstate the winter fuel allowance for those who need it most. Instead of hiding behind vague promises, he needs to face the truth. His policies are leaving people out to suffer, and his evasive answers only make things worse. Starmer's failure to prioritise the well-being of the British people shows a complete lack of leadership, and his detachment from the real, pressing issues is utterly infuriating. It's time for him to stop playing political games and start showing some real responsibility. Do you agree? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now in other news. After 5 months of disastrous missteps and plummeting poll ratings, Keir Starmer is scrambling to salvage his government. With the general election set for 2029, Starmer has revealed a plan that sets vague numerical targets for the economy, NHS, public safety, energy security, and social mobility. But don't be fooled, these so-called missions are nothing more than an attempt to paper over his government's massive failures. Polling expert Sir John Curtis has hit the nail on the head, pointing out that Starmer's government has hit significant political trouble rather early on and questioning whether a politician who has shown absolutely no ability to construct a narrative can suddenly find one. Curtis's assessment is brutal but spot on. Starmer lacks a clear vision, a cohesive story, or any meaningful plan for the future. Instead of offering solutions, all Starmer has done is make a series of unpopular decisions, like slashing winter fuel payments, hiking taxes, and implementing a new family farm tax that threatens to destroy generations of British farms. His excuses about inheriting a badly damaged economy and a £22 billion black hole left by the previous government are worn-out deflections. His claims of stabilising the economy ring hollow when the public sees their bills rising, pensioners freezing, and farmers on the brink of collapse. Sir John Curtis rightly says that Starmer's party has no real story, just a vague notion that, if you improve things, people will vote for you. But improving things requires specific, actionable change, and Starmer's leadership has failed to deliver any of that. Conservative and Reform UK leaders have been quick to point out that, after just 5 months in office, Starmer is already on his 17th reset, and the damage is done. From freezing pensioners to putting British farms at risk, this government is failing to deliver on its promises of change. The British public is being shortchanged, and Starmer is desperately trying to cover up his incompetence with yet another round of vague targets and empty rhetoric. If you agree, kindly give this video a like to show your support. If you want to stay informed on the issues shaping the UK, this channel is the place for you. In each video, we tackle the most important discussions that affect the future of the country. Be sure to subscribe and stay up to date by hitting the notification bell. See you in the next one.